What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Zoe, and today I'm here to share with you what I read in the month of August. Gosh. I read a total of 8 books, I believe, in the month of August. I read the majority of the books during the Booktubeathon in the very beginning of the month, so I'm just gonna gloss over those real fast. You can check out my Booktubeathon wrap-up to hear more of my thoughts on the books, but these are the books that I read during the Booktubeathon at the very, very beginning of August. I did complete the 7 books of Booktubeathon, and I read 4 out of the 7 during the first week of August. The first one that I read and finished on August 1st was Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I loved this book. I was terrified by this book. It kept me up at night, but I really, really liked it. I did give this 5 stars. Loved it. The next book that I read during the Booktubeathon was Amina's Voice, a middle grade. I also really enjoyed this book as well. The next book that I read was the Tea Dragon Society by Katie O'Neill, and I really, really liked this graphic novel. It was so cute. I want a tea dragon. The next book that I read during the Booktubeathon and at the beginning of August was Beneath the Sugar Sky by Shauna McGuire. Shout out to my friend who snagged me a signed copy of this book. I had to put it in a video somewhere because I'm just so excited. This is my first signed copy of a book ever, and it's so cool. She signed it, you guys. I love this series. I am so ready for January. I'm so ready for book 4. Also really enjoyed this book. And the last book that I read during the Booktubeathon was a manga, and that was Dream and Sun Volume 2 by Ichigo Takano. I'm obsessed with this series. I was so sad because I went to Barnes & Noble like a couple days ago, and I really, really wanted Volume 3, and they had every single volume except for Volume 3. So I need to order it. I need to finish it because I really, really love this series so much. That's 5 out of the 8 books that I read in August. I really had a slow month after Booktubeathon. I think I got a little burnt out after Booktubeathon, and this season for me personally for work is so busy, and I am just putting my all into work lately, and so that has been honestly just very like energy consuming to the point where even reading a book is just not something I've been wanting to do. I also have been really challenged in my reading lately, but with all that said, I really did slow down after Booktubeathon. I only read 3 books after the first week, so that's about a book a week, and that's actually pretty slow for me. I got in a bit of a slump. I wasn't loving a lot of the books that I've read, so with all that said, I didn't have the greatest reading month. I really did love the books that I read for Booktubeathon, had a really, really good time, and then it just kind of went downhill from there. So I am just going to talk about the last 3 books that I read during the month of August. The next book that I read was The Cheerleaders by Kara Thomas. I was so excited for this book, you guys. I read Little Monsters in January of this year and was so shocked at how much I loved it. Like, loved it. I have not had a good time with trying to find like awesome YA thriller books, and Little Monsters is so dang good. I love it. So when I heard that Kara Thomas was coming out with another mystery thriller in the month of July, I was stoked, and I got the book. I read the book like immediately after Booktubeathon, and I just didn't like it as much as I wanted to. So The Cheerleaders follows a girl who grows up in a hometown where all 5 of the cheerleaders on this hometown's cheerleading squad died. They all died for different reasons. 2 died in a car accident, 2 were murdered, and then the last one committed suicide. And the last cheerleader was the main character's sister. So her sister kind of has never felt like it really was a suicide, and she's just determined to figure out what actually happened, why all these cheerleaders died, and what was the link between all of them. It's definitely like a fascinating concept, and I was super intrigued when I heard about it. I just didn't love this as much as Little Monsters, not even close. I thought it was a really fascinating read. It wasn't like necessarily like a giant twist at the end. And I'm like even struggling to remember everything that kind of happened because it just wasn't that memorable, and I didn't hate it, but the characters definitely fell flat for me. I didn't love the main character. She was a little bit annoying. Not that you have to like love a main character to love a book, but I just didn't like this one as much as Little Monsters, and I think that's my own fault. I do that every time. I get super stoked on a book and I have to like not have these high expectations, but I just really did because I love Little Monsters so much. But I just didn't like this one as much, unfortunately. I'm still a fan of Kara Thomas. I still think this was a fun read, but it wasn't what I was really hoping it to be. I think I gave this one... Overall, I gave this one a 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in the month of August was... Oh no! I messed those up. Oh, dang it. Okay, so scratch that. I'm not redoing this whole video, but I read Sharp Objects during the Booktubeathon and loved it, and I read Dark Places by Gillian Flynn later in the month. Can you tell that I'm just like, my brain is just not working this month at all? Anyway, I did really like Sharp Objects, and because I was obsessed with Sharp Objects, I had to pick up Gillian Flynn's other book, Dark Places. I've already read Gone Girl a couple years ago, loved Gone Girl, obsessed with Sharp Places. Oh my gosh, Sharp Places was so... Sharp Objects, oh my gosh, I cannot. I quit, I'm done. Ugh. So I immediately went and picked up Dark Places by Gillian Flynn later in the month, and I read it. It's been on my TBR shelf for a long time. I loved Gone Girl. I saw it at like Goodwill once, and I was like, I'm gonna pick this up because Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl was really good, and maybe I'll read Dark Places at some point. And I didn't for like years. It's been on my TBR for probably 2 years. And this was so scary. This terrified me. It was so dang scary. I loved it though. I listened to the audiobook, and honestly, there were just some scenes that were difficult to listen to. Like, I was scared. Yeah. There was one night where I just kept waking up because I was like, so this is a story that follows our main character, Libby Day, who was 7 years old when the rest of her family was murdered in her house she was in. She escaped, and they were supposedly murdered by her older brother. It was her 2 sisters and her mom. And I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this, but she has grown up with that kind of just, you know, obviously PTSD, insanity, and her brother's been in jail. She basically believes that her brother killed her family just like everybody else, except there are a small group of people that do not believe that her brother was the murderer and that there were other events that took place that night. And so Libby ends up getting kind of involved in this club that believes that he didn't do the murders, and she sets out to, I guess, kind of investigate herself. And so she talks to a lot of people in the past, and like crazy series chain of events. It wasn't as much of a twist as it was more of like a slow burn, like you figure it out as it's like the book is unfolding. What I loved is that it was between 3 perspectives of Libby, and then her brother on the day of the murders, and then her mom on the day of the murders. And so you're picking up, like, you're going back and forth, you're jumping timelines, and you're also getting different perspectives, and it was so good. It was so, so good. I love Gillian Flynn. I am dying for another book from her. This was fantastic. I struggled in the beginning because Sharp Objects, I really like the main character right off the bat, but Libby is so dark and she's so depressing and she's so negative that it was really hard to read from her perspective for the first little bit there. And I just was kind of like, okay, like, this is like, you need to read this when you're not in a depressed mood, because I mean, she is just very like negative and dark and like everything is wrong and stuff. I don't know though. I was so impressed by this story. Really liked it. Scared the crap out of me, but I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I need more coffee before I talk about this book. Okay, so the next book that I read was, and this was the last book that I read in August, and that was Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Let me talk about what this book is first, because I always jump around and that's so annoying. Okay, so this book was about, oh, my husband's home. This book is about 3 girls in kind of like a fantasy Russia setting, and it's kind of like a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. And I mean, they're super badass female characters. There's multiple perspectives that this book is told from, but those are the 3 main people. And like, things happen. I don't know. It's like a very kind of, it's very fantasy. It was like 460 pages. And one second. Andrew! I'm keeping that in there. Do you want to say hi to the camera?
I'm her husband.
This is my sweaty husband who got back from the gym. You look so red. Okay, so as I was saying, this book follows 3 main character girls, and I'm really bad at explaining all the events that took place, but basically, like, one of the main girls, her dad was a moneylender. He was a really bad moneylender, so she, like, took over and got all the money back, and then this, like, magical Stark Ice King guy who was, like, evil, like, found out about how she could get all this money, and so she then had powers of turning silver into gold. I don't know. It was weird. It was the book that we chose to read for my book club here, and I really wanted to challenge myself and read it, and I did, so I completed that goal. I just didn't love it. High fantasy stories that are long and complicated and just like super detailed are not my favorite, and that was this, and I'm proud of myself for reading it, and I didn't hate it. There were some aspects of this book that I actually really loved and wish there were books just on some of these particular aspects, but there wasn't. So I didn't hate it, but I really just didn't enjoy reading it. I really liked the first maybe like 100 pages, and then I just didn't like it, and it was really hard to get through this book. It took me like a month to get through because I just couldn't read more than maybe 20 pages in a sitting, and that's not normal for me. I usually like to read about 50 pages in one sitting, and so it just moved extremely slow. I also really got frustrated because each chapter is told from a different perspective, and she continued to add perspectives of different characters like as the book went on, but she didn't tell you at the beginning of the chapter whose perspective it was from. So I was super confused. I would read like a whole page or a whole paragraph before I realized who I was reading from, and I just didn't understand the point of that. I wish she would have just said, like, you know, the name of the character at the top of the chapter just to like gauge who the perspective was from. Overall, like, the female characters were really cool. I just didn't really love it. It just was hard to get through for me. So overall, I ended up giving this 2.5 out of 5 stars as well. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of August. That really wasn't a lot for me, but it's okay because September is a new month and I have exciting things to read. Oh, I forgot too. So my TBR jar select from random challenge. I forgot to mention when I talked about that in my last video that I read multiple books at a time. So even if I'm reading a book for my TBR that I don't necessarily want to read, like mood wise, but I picked from random, that doesn't mean that I'm still not reading something that I like want to read. So for me, that's like easier to get through and like just challenge myself. Like, okay, if I'm not loving it, read a chapter a night and just like get through it kind of thing. I think I forgot to mention that, and I just wanted to throw that in there because I'm still very much a mood reader, but I also am trying to just challenge myself to kind of flesh out my TBR and also read things that I don't necessarily want to read, but I should read. So that's why. Anyway, so last month was my first month trying that, and the book that I picked was right here, and that's Royce Rolls, and I hated it. So I will unhaul this probably next year. I like to do like an annual unhaul, so I will probably unhaul this next year if I don't try and pick it up again. But I got about 50 pages in and couldn't stand it. It was so obnoxious. I thought I would love it, but there were like these random, oh, what are those called? The things at the bottom, what are those called? I can't remember what those are called. Citations kind of thing? Like towards the bottom of like so many pages, and I don't understand like who they're from or what's happening. It's supposed to be like the reality TV show is scripted, or if it's just, I don't know, it's weird, and I didn't care for the characters. Everything was annoying. I was so annoyed, and I didn't want to pick this up. So I DNF'd it, and I'll probably unhaul it in my annual unhaul. But I'm proud of myself for trying, because that was the whole point of the TBR jar. So with that said, I have the handy dandy TBR jar right here, and I'm going to pick my read from my TBR shelf for the month of September. I hope it's a good one. There's so many books I want to read in September, so I'm nervous because I don't really want to read any from my TBR. Okay, this is the one I'm reading. It is Beautiful Broken Girls, which, okay, that's not a bad choice because it's kind of fall. Let me go grab it. Okay, so this is the book that I picked for the month of September at random. Beautiful Broken Girls. You can't see that. That's okay. This is kind of like a mystery thriller young adult, which I'm all about right now because it is fall. So this actually fits really well with the mood that I'm in. I'm excited to give it a try. It's not like the top of my list, but I am certainly going to try to read it. So yeah. Alright you guys, well those are all of the books that I read in the month of August. I hope to read more in September and to get out of this slump. I hope to just do better this month. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are. Be kind to someone today, and I will see you soon in my next video. Bye!